The psychology of self-motivation begins in silence, not in noise, not in applause, not in pressure from the outside world. It begins in the quiet space where you meet yourself without distraction. Most people wait to feel ready before they act, but readiness is not a feeling. It is a decision. You say you want discipline. You say you want focus. You say you want success. But have you understood the mind that must carry you there? Self-motivation is not excitement. It is not hype. It is not shouting affirmations in the mirror. It is understanding the nature of your thoughts and choosing who is in control. The mind seeks comfort. The mind avoids pain. This is natural, but growth demands discomfort. When you understand this, you stop fighting your resistance and you start training it. You stop asking why it feels hard and you begin asking who is in charge. You are not lazy. You are conditioned. You are not weak. You are distracted. The psychology of self-motivation teaches you to observe your impulses without obeying them, to feel doubt without surrendering to it, to act even when emotion does not cooperate. Most people are controlled by mood. When they feel good, they work. When they feel tired, they rest. When they feel inspired, they create. When they feel bored, they escape. But if your actions depend on feelings, your progress will always be unstable. Mastery begins when action becomes independent of emotion. Awareness before action is the foundation of self-motivation, and yet most people overlook it. They rush into doing, believing that motion alone will produce results. They mistake busyness for progress, effort for mastery, and activity for achievement. But motion without awareness is like a ship sailing without a rudder that moves. Yes, but it drifts, it wastes energy, and it rarely reaches the destination it intended. To harness true self-motivation, you must first understand where your mind is, what it wants, what it resists, and how it reacts to challenge. Awareness is not a passive state. It is active observation. It is seeing your thoughts, feelings, and impulses as they arise without immediately obeying them or judging them. Most people live in reaction. Something happens, and they respond automatically. An email arrives, and they panic. A comment comes, and they feel hurt. A small failure occurs, and they give up. These reactions seem normal because they are automatic, but they are not productive. They are not aligned with growth. To develop self-motivation, you must become aware of these reactions. You must notice your inner dialogue, the whispers of doubt, the excuses you offer yourself, the stories you tell to justify inaction. Awareness allows you to pause between stimulus and response. In that pause lies choice. In that pause lies power. A mind that acts without awareness is a mind that is led by habit, comfort, and fear. A mind that observes before acting is a mind that can choose purposefully, that can decide which impulses to follow and which to ignore. Awareness before action is also awareness of context. You cannot act effectively if you do not see your environment clearly. What distractions are present? What pressures are influencing your decisions? What patterns are repeating themselves in your life that prevent growth? To act with self-motivation, you must know not only yourself but also the circumstances in which you operate. Awareness sharpens perception. It allows you to see opportunities that were invisible before. It allows you to see pitfalls before they become obstacles. When you act from awareness, every step you take is intentional. Every effort is aligned with your goals. There is no wasted motion. Awareness is not a one-time exercise. It is a continuous practice. Each day you must check in with your mind. Notice how you feel. Notice what your impulses are urging. Notice where your energy flows and where it leaks. Only then can you direct your attention and effort wisely. People often confuse awareness with overthinking, but they are not the same. Overthinking paralyzes. Awareness illuminates. Awareness sees clearly without judgment. It notices without attachment. It observes without letting the ego interfere. When you cultivate this kind of awareness, your actions begin to change naturally. You become less reactive. You become more deliberate. You become more capable of sustaining motivation even when external circumstances are difficult or your mood is low. Awareness before action is also about recognizing your limits and your patterns. You notice where you have historically faltered. You notice the moments when you give in to comfort instead of striving for growth. This observation is not meant to shame but to inform. It gives you data about yourself that you can use to improve. Without awareness, you are like a blind person running a race. You may move fast, but you will stumble over obstacles, waste energy, and fall short of your potential. Awareness is the first act of self-respect. It says, I see myself, I see my mind, I see my tendencies, I see my world. And from this seeing, I choose to act differently. Awareness before action also builds emotional intelligence. When you observe your feelings and reactions, you stop being controlled by them. Anger, fear, doubt, laziness, impatience, they still arise, but they no longer dictate your behavior. You become the observer, the one who decides whether to act or to wait, whether to persevere or to reconsider. This is where self-motivation truly begins, because motivation is not a fleeting feeling, it is a deliberate practice, a choice that requires clear perception. When awareness guides action, your energy is no longer scattered. You are no longer enslaved by impulse or distraction. Every effort, every movement, every choice is purposeful. Growth becomes inevitable because your mind is aligned with your intention. The practice of awareness before action may seem subtle, even invisible at first, but its effects compound over time. Like a muscle trained through repetition, the mind becomes stronger, sharper, more disciplined, and more capable of sustaining momentum even when the path is difficult. Those who fail to cultivate awareness act blindly. Those who cultivate it act with vision, and vision turns effort into results, struggle into mastery, and hesitation into progress. Awareness before action is the gateway to all self-motivation, and without it, action is directionless, energy is wasted, and potential remains unrealized. Once you see clearly, the rest follows naturally. Discipline over mood is the cornerstone of lasting self-motivation. Most people confuse motivation with emotion, believing that they need to feel inspired, excited, or energetic in order to act. They wait for the perfect mood to arrive, for the ideal moment when everything aligns, and when that moment does not come, they stop or delay. This is why so many people fail to sustain progress. Feeling motivated is temporary. Feeling disciplined is permanent. Discipline is the bridge between desire and achievement, and it does not rely on how you feel in a particular moment. Your feelings are fleeting, they are shaped by circumstances, fatigue, and external events. One day you may feel eager and unstoppable, the next, tired and discouraged. If your actions are dictated by these feelings, your progress will be inconsistent. Discipline over mood means choosing action, even when you do not feel like it. It means honoring your commitments to yourself regardless of circumstance. It means understanding that the mind often resists what it knows is necessary. Resistance is natural. Laziness is natural. Excuses are natural, but they are not stronger than disciplined action. Discipline is not punishment. It is a form of self-respect, a recognition that your long-term goals are more important than temporary comfort. When you prioritize discipline over mood, you free yourself from the tyranny of emotion. You no longer need to wait for motivation to arrive, you create it through your choices. Small disciplined actions compound over time. Waking up early, training consistently, studying when tired, finishing tasks when distracted. These moments may feel unpleasant, but they build momentum. They strengthen identity. They reinforce the belief that you are reliable, capable, and committed. Acting with discipline also trains the mind to follow intention rather than impulse. When you act only when you feel like it, you reinforce weakness. When you act in spite of reluctance, you reinforce strength. Every decision to do what is necessary strengthens your inner willpower, making the next choice easier and the next challenge less intimidating. Discipline over mood also protects you from external unpredictability. Life is rarely convenient or perfectly timed. Circumstances change. Obstacles appear. Plans are disrupted. If your progress depends on how you feel, you are at the mercy of circumstance. But if your progress is rooted in discipline, you move forward regardless. Discipline creates independence from these fluctuations. Another aspect of discipline over mood is the ability to maintain focus amidst distraction. The mind is naturally drawn to pleasure and comfort, to entertainment and avoidance. Without discipline, attention wanders. Effort is diluted. Potential remains untapped. With discipline, attention is controlled, energy is directed, and results emerge. Discipline is also cumulative. Each act of self-control reinforces your identity as someone who can follow through. Every time you choose to act instead of procrastinate, you send a message to yourself that your goals matter more than temporary feelings. Over time, this becomes a habit. The mind starts to expect discipline. The body starts to cooperate. Motivation becomes internal, self-sustained, and less dependent on external triggers. Discipline over mood also shifts your perspective on discomfort. Most people avoid challenges because they do not feel like dealing with difficulty. Discipline teaches that discomfort is not the enemy, it is a signal of growth. Feeling resistance, boredom, or fatigue does not justify quitting, it just marks the point where effort matters most. When you act with discipline, you develop patience. You learn that meaningful achievement is rarely immediate. It requires consistency, persistence, and the ability to act even when you do not feel like it. Mood fluctuates. Motivation ebbs and flows. Only discipline can carry you through the valleys when feelings are weak and obstacles are high. To live by discipline over mood is to become sovereign over yourself. You are no longer a prisoner of how you feel in any given moment. You set the tone, you create the rhythm, and you determine your path. This is the mindset that separates those who succeed from those who only wish. Discipline is quiet, often unnoticed, but its results are undeniable. It is the difference between a dreamer and a doer. When the mind learns to obey principle rather than emotion, every action becomes intentional. Every choice reinforces growth. Every day becomes an opportunity to build momentum. Discipline over mood is not a restriction, it is liberation. It frees you from waiting, from hesitation, and from the limits of fleeting feelings. When you act through discipline, motivation no longer controls you, you control it. Identity shapes behavior, and yet most people underestimate its power. We focus on external goals, thinking that achieving them will somehow change who we are, thinking that if we lose weight, earn money, or gain recognition, our life will suddenly feel different. But the truth is that behavior follows identity, not the other way around. Your habits, your decisions, your patterns of thought all reflect who you believe yourself to be at the core. If your identity is weak, inconsistent, or undefined, your behavior will mirror that uncertainty. You may start and stop projects, commit and abandon promises, and swing between motivation and despair. Identity is the lens through which you interpret the world, and through which the world interprets you. It dictates what you tolerate, what you pursue, and what you refuse. People who fail to understand this often chase results without changing the self that is responsible for producing those results. They seek motivation in external sources, mentors, books, speeches, environments, or social validation. These things can inspire, yes, but they do not transform the underlying identity that governs action. Until you see yourself differently, until you adopt the belief that you are the type of person who acts, persists, and overcomes, your behavior will remain inconsistent. Identity shapes behavior because every choice you make is filtered through self-perception. If you see yourself as someone who gives up easily, even small obstacles will feel insurmountable. If you see yourself as disciplined, persistent, and capable, even challenges become opportunities. This is why self-motivation begins with self-definition. Who are you becoming? Who do you want to be? Not just what you want to achieve. The clarity of this identity directs behavior more reliably than any temporary emotion or external motivation. Identity also creates alignment between thought and action. When your sense of self is clear, the steps you take feel natural rather than forced. You no longer act out of compulsion or obligation alone. You act because it is congruent with the person you know yourself to be. Habits, routines, and choices are no longer separate from who you are. They are expressions of your identity. People often misunderstand consistency, believing it requires constant struggle against internal resistance. But when identity is solid, consistency becomes effortless because your actions are reflections of your self-perception. You do not need to motivate yourself each time because the behavior is already aligned with who you are. Identity also dictates your standards. It determines what you accept and what you reject. A person who identifies as someone who values growth will reject excuses, laziness, and short-term comfort. A person who identifies as someone who pursues excellence will demand quality from themselves even when no one is watching. These standards emerge naturally once identity is consciously chosen. Furthermore, identity shapes resilience. When you see yourself as someone who overcomes, challenges become fuel instead of obstacles. Setbacks do not define you, they test the strength of the self you have chosen to become. Every failure becomes feedback rather than final judgment. Identity shapes the lens through which every experience is interpreted. Without a strong identity, motivation is fragile because it depends on fleeting feelings, circumstances, and external reinforcement. With a strong identity, motivation becomes intrinsic, stable, and self-sustaining. It is the difference between acting because you have to and acting because it is who you are. Identity also dictates the people you attract and the environment you create around yourself. You cannot consistently behave in ways that are contrary to your self-concept without internal conflict. If you identify as ambitious, you will naturally seek people and situations that support growth. If you identify as disciplined, your environment will shift to minimize distraction. Identity is the blueprint for your actions, and once you understand this, you can deliberately craft the self that will produce the life you desire. Small, intentional choices shape identity over time. The habits you keep, the promises you honor, and the actions you repeat form the foundation of how you see yourself. Every decision either strengthens or erodes that identity. The process is gradual, but its effects are profound. This is why self-motivation is deeply psychological. It is less about forcing action and more about becoming the kind of person whose actions naturally align with their goals. Once identity is established, behavior, discipline, consistency, and motivation all follow effortlessly. Identity shapes behavior because who you believe yourself to be is the ultimate driver of what you do. When you understand this, you no longer chase motivation, you cultivate the self that produces it naturally. Small promises build self-trust, and self-trust is the foundation of lasting motivation. Most people underestimate the power of the commitments they make to themselves, thinking that only big achievements or grand gestures matter. But in truth, it is the small, consistent promises that shape character and define who we are. When you tell yourself you will wake up early, exercise, study, or complete a task, and you follow through, even when it is inconvenient or uncomfortable, you are doing more than finishing a task. You are reinforcing trust in yourself. Without self-trust, motivation is fragile. You may feel inspired one day, but the next day, doubt and hesitation creep in. You may start projects with enthusiasm, only to abandon them when challenges arise. The mind learns quickly whether it can rely on you. Every time you break a promise to yourself, no matter how small, you weaken your inner authority. You tell your subconscious that your word is negotiable, that your intentions are unreliable. This creates an internal conflict, a desire to achieve paired with a lack of faith in your own ability to follow through. Motivation cannot survive in this conflict. On the other hand, every time you keep a promise to yourself, you strengthen your inner alignment. You send a signal to your mind that you are reliable, capable, and committed. This builds confidence that does not depend on external validation. Small promises are powerful because they are attainable, measurable, and repeatable. They are not overwhelming, and they are within your control. By mastering the small, you prepare yourself for the large. Waking up on time consistently is a small promise that strengthens your identity as someone disciplined. Finishing one focused task is a small promise that reinforces your commitment to productivity. Reading one page a day may seem insignificant, but over time, these small acts accumulate into a pattern of reliability and self-mastery. The compounding effect is profound. Small promises also teach the mind the value of consistency. It is easy to be motivated once or twice, but to keep showing up when energy is low, distractions are high, and obstacles appear. That is where real self-motivation is cultivated. Each kept promise is a vote for yourself, a declaration that you are worth the effort, that your goals are worth prioritizing, and that your word is not empty. Self-trust built through small promises is not fragile. It grows resilient through repetition. When challenges arise, when fear or doubt creeps in, the person who has practiced keeping promises can rely on a proven record of reliability. This confidence sustains action even when emotion is absent. Another key aspect of small promises is that they shift the focus from outcomes to identity. You do not make a promise because it will immediately produce a result. You make a promise because it defines the person you are becoming. Each completed promise strengthens the self-image of someone capable, disciplined, and trustworthy. Conversely, breaking a promise even once creates a ripple effect of doubt. The mind begins to question, the emotions falter, and motivation wavers. Therefore, every promise matters. No act of self-trust is too small to influence the whole trajectory of your growth. Small promises also create clarity and reduce internal conflict. When you commit to a simple action, you remove ambiguity. Your mind knows exactly what is expected, and your energy is directed. Each promise kept reinforces neural pathways of reliability, strengthening both habit and identity. Over time, the cumulative effect is remarkable. The mind begins to trust that you are someone who does what you say you will do, and this trust replaces the need for constant external motivation. Motivation becomes self-sustaining because you are your own guarantee. Importantly, small promises are practical. They are achievable even on difficult days. They create momentum. One promise kept leads naturally to the next. Action becomes easier, confidence grows, and motivation no longer depends on fleeting feelings or external circumstances. In essence, self-trust is the currency of self-motivation. The stronger the trust, the less you need to push yourself through force or pressure. You move forward naturally because you know you can. Every small promise kept is an investment in that trust, and every investment compounds over time, producing extraordinary results. Small promises build self-trust, and self-trust is the engine that drives consistent, reliable, and sustainable self-motivation. Discomfort is the path to growth, and yet most people spend their lives avoiding it. From the moment we are born, the mind is conditioned to seek comfort, to escape pain, and to cling to familiarity. This is natural, instinctual, and often necessary for survival. But when comfort becomes the standard, growth is impossible. Growth demands challenge. Growth demands effort. Growth demands moving into the space that feels difficult, uncomfortable, even frightening. Discomfort is not the enemy, it is the signal that you are stretching, evolving, and stepping beyond the boundaries of what you have known before. The moment you resist discomfort is the moment you stall. Every breakthrough, every achievement, every personal transformation has been preceded by a period of discomfort. Whether it is waking up early when the body wants rest, exercising when the muscles protest, confronting fears that have lingered for years, or taking risks that the mind warns against, discomfort precedes growth. Most people try to shortcut this process. They seek comfort in repetition, in routine, in avoidance. They wait for the perfect moment, the perfect conditions, or the easiest path. But these are illusions. Life does not reward comfort, it rewards courage. The psychology of self-motivation is rooted in understanding that discomfort is not punishment but a tool. When you feel resistance, it is a signal that you are approaching a threshold. Push through it, and you expand your capacity. Avoid it, and you shrink your potential. The key is to learn how to lean into discomfort rather than flee from it. This does not mean being reckless. It does not mean ignoring physical or emotional limits. It means choosing deliberate challenge over passive ease. It means acting in alignment with long-term goals, even when the present moment is uncomfortable. Discomfort also trains resilience. When you regularly face difficult situations, your mind and body learn that struggle is temporary and surmountable. You build tolerance. You build strength. You learn to act even when conditions are less than ideal. This is what separates those who achieve from those who merely dream. Discomfort teaches patience and humility. It reminds you that mastery is not instant. It requires repeated effort, trial and error, and persistence in the face of difficulty. When you accept discomfort as part of the process, you stop fearing failure. You stop avoiding hard work. You stop relying on fleeting motivation or emotion because you understand that transformation is earned through sustained effort, not convenience. Another dimension of discomfort is its ability to clarify purpose. When you face challenges that test your commitment, you learn what truly matters to you. You discover which goals are worth pursuing and which are not aligned with your deeper self. This clarity sharpens focus and strengthens motivation. Discomfort also develops courage. Every time you do what is hard, what feels awkward, what seems impossible, you expand the definition of what you are capable of. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is action in spite of fear. The more you practice stepping into discomfort, the more naturally courageous your behavior becomes. Discomfort is also intimately tied to self-awareness. When you notice the resistance, the tension, the unease, you are observing your mind. You are learning your limits, your tendencies, and your patterns. Awareness allows you to act intentionally rather than reactively. You see where growth is possible, where fear is holding you back, and where action is required. Many people seek external shortcuts, coaches, mentors, books, or external motivation. These things can guide, inspire, or accelerate learning, but none of them can replace the internal work of leaning into discomfort. True growth is earned from inside. It is the repeated choice to act when the mind resists, to persist when the body protests, and to keep moving forward when everything within screams to stop. Discomfort is the laboratory of transformation. The more you inhabit it, the stronger, wiser, and more capable you become. Avoid it, and stagnation sets in. Seek it, and progress becomes inevitable. Embracing discomfort is not a one-time decision. It is a daily practice. Every challenge, every task, every moment that tests your patience, focus, or courage is an opportunity to grow. The mind that chooses discomfort consciously builds momentum, resilience, and confidence that cannot be shaken by fleeting emotion or external circumstance. Discomfort is not a barrier, it is the gateway. Growth is not comfortable, but it is always worth the effort. Environment influences willpower in ways most people underestimate. We like to believe that self-motivation is purely internal, that if we just had more discipline, focus, or determination, we could achieve anything. But the truth is that the spaces we inhabit, the people we surround ourselves with, and the cues we expose ourselves to have a profound effect on our ability to act consistently. Willpower is not infinite. It is a resource that can be strengthened, yes, but it is also depleted when constantly challenged by poor conditions. Every distraction, every temptation, every unstructured hour saps energy, and the mind, left unguarded, will naturally default to ease, comfort, and avoidance. The environment is the silent architect of behavior. A cluttered room, endless notifications, or a noisy space makes focus difficult. A supportive environment, structured routines, and clear boundaries make action effortless. When you deliberately design your surroundings, you reduce reliance on fluctuating willpower. The easier it is to act, the less energy you waste resisting impulses. This is why people often blame themselves for lack of motivation when in reality, their environment is undermining their efforts. Surround yourself with people who embody the qualities you wish to cultivate. Energy is contagious. If your peers are disciplined, curious, and growth-oriented, their habits reinforce yours. If they are distracted, lazy, or negative, their influence seeps into your behavior. Environment is more than physical space, it includes social and informational contexts. What you consume mentally, the news, social media, conversations affects focus, mood, and drive. Constant exposure to noise, criticism, or mindless content diminishes willpower. Intentional selection of what enters your mind fortifies your ability to act. Another aspect of environment influencing willpower is routine. The mind thrives on predictability. Habits are the bridge between intention and action. By structuring your environment to support productive habits, you remove friction and reduce the need for constant decision-making. If everything you need to act is accessible, the action becomes almost automatic. Conversely, if effort is required to overcome environmental obstacles, the mind resists, energy drains, and motivation falters. Clarity in your surroundings mirrors clarity in your mind. When your workspace is organized, when distractions are minimized, when tools and resources are ready, you make fewer decisions and conserve willpower for what matters. Environment also teaches cues and triggers. Every object, sound, or pattern in your space can reinforce behavior. A visual reminder of your goals, a journal on your desk, a workout outfit prepared, all act as triggers to activate the habits you intend to build. These cues bypass reliance on fluctuating mood or temporary motivation. On the other hand, disorganized, chaotic, or overstimulating environments weaken resolve. You may intend to act, but the surrounding noise pulls attention away. You may want to focus, but the brain is distracted by competing stimuli. Environment shapes not only opportunity, but perception. A person immersed in clarity, order, and inspiration sees possibility. A person immersed in chaos, clutter, and distraction sees obstacles. Willpower is constantly being negotiated with the environment. Every time you resist temptation, you expend energy. Every time you remove friction and set yourself up to succeed, you conserve it. Therefore, the most effective use of willpower is not brute force, but strategic design. Environment amplifies action when properly aligned and diminishes it when neglected. Discipline over mood, identity, small promises, and embracing discomfort all rely on a supportive environment to flourish. Even the most motivated person struggles in a space that undermines effort. Conversely, a well-designed environment can carry action forward when willpower feels low. Recognizing this connection transforms self-motivation from struggle to strategy. You begin to treat your surroundings as allies rather than obstacles. You curate your social circles, your digital inputs, your physical spaces, and your routines to reflect the behavior and outcomes you desire. The environment becomes a silent partner, guiding attention, reinforcing habits, and sustaining momentum. Willpower is not an endless reserve to draw from blindly, it is a resource to manage, protect, and support with thoughtful conditions. Those who master their environment discover that motivation is less about pushing and more about positioning. When your environment aligns with your goals, action becomes natural. Resistance diminishes, focus sharpens, and energy flows toward growth rather than distraction. Environment influences willpower because it either supports or undermines every decision you make. Design it wisely, and your motivation becomes unstoppable. Consistency creates transformation, and yet it is the element most overlooked in the pursuit of self-motivation. People often look for dramatic breakthroughs, sudden inspiration, or miraculous changes, believing that progress is the result of a single moment of effort or a burst of energy. But true transformation is rarely spectacular in its beginning. It is quiet, it is repeated, it is unglamorous. Transformation emerges from the accumulation of small, consistent actions over time. Each choice, each effort, each disciplined act compounds into results that eventually become undeniable. Consistency is not merely showing up when you feel motivated, it is showing up when you do not. It is the ability to act according to principle, not emotion. It is the practice of honoring the commitments you make to yourself, whether they feel exciting, exhausting, or tedious. Without consistency, even the greatest intentions dissolve into nothing. Motivation comes and goes, mood fluctuates, circumstances change, but consistency bridges the gap between desire and achievement. It is the force that transforms potential into reality. Many people underestimate the power of small repeated actions. They believe that only massive effort will produce results, yet it is the daily, faithful application of effort that creates lasting change. Waking up early every day, practicing skill incrementally, reading, exercising, or completing tasks, even when inconvenient, these repeated actions build momentum that no single burst of effort can achieve. Consistency also reinforces identity. When you consistently act in alignment with your values and goals, you train your mind to see yourself as someone reliable, capable, and disciplined. Identity and consistency feed each other. The more you act consistently, the stronger your identity becomes, and the stronger your identity, the more naturally consistency follows. This is why small promises matter, why discipline over mood is critical, and why embracing discomfort leads to growth. Every repeated action signals to your mind and body that you are committed to a pattern, a standard, a path. Over time, these patterns solidify into habits, and habits solidify into character. Character, in turn, produces outcomes. Transformation is therefore not the product of luck or fleeting inspiration, but of relentless, deliberate repetition. Consistency also builds resilience. Life will inevitably present obstacles, distractions, and periods of fatigue or discouragement. A person who has cultivated consistency does not wait for conditions to be perfect. They act anyway. They understand that momentum is maintained not by fleeting emotion, but by habitual action. Each day of showing up strengthens the internal muscle that sustains motivation even in the absence of external support or temporary inspiration. Consistency teaches patience and long-term thinking. Results are rarely immediate, and the mind often rebels when it cannot see instant progress. By committing to consistent action, you train yourself to value the process rather than just the outcome. You learn to trust that effort, compounded over time, produces growth that is profound and lasting. Another aspect of consistency is its ability to reduce internal conflict. When actions are repeated and habitual, decisions become easier. Energy is conserved because the mind no longer debates whether to act, it simply acts. This removes friction, reduces reliance on willpower, and allows focus to flow toward meaningful effort rather than indecision. Consistency is also cumulative. A single day of effort may seem insignificant, but repeated over weeks, months, and years, it creates exponential results. Just as water shapes stone through persistent flow, daily disciplined action shapes character, skill, and life. Those who fail often look for shortcuts, trying to achieve transformation through intense bursts of activity or sporadic motivation. These approaches fail because they lack the power of repetition. Transformation without consistency is fragile, temporary, and unsustainable. True change is built slowly, quietly, and relentlessly. The psychology of self-motivation teaches that progress is a product of aligned habits, disciplined action, and deliberate repetition. Consistency ties together all the other keys. Awareness ensures that each action is intentional. Discipline ensures that action happens regardless of mood. Identity ensures alignment with who you are becoming. Small promises reinforce trust in yourself. Embracing discomfort ensures growth, and environment supports sustained effort. Consistency is the force that turns these principles into transformation. Every repeated choice, every action taken in alignment with purpose, compounds into results that eventually exceed expectations. It is the quiet daily commitment that separates those who achieve from those who wish, those who transform from those who stagnate. Consistency creates transformation because small, repeated actions over time surpass fleeting inspiration. When you show up relentlessly, growth becomes inevitable. As we reach the end of this journey into the psychology of self-motivation, remember that true change begins from within. Awareness allows you to see clearly. Discipline ensures action regardless of mood. Identity shapes every decision. Small promises build trust in yourself. Embracing discomfort fuels growth. Your environment either strengthens or weakens your willpower, and consistency turns all effort into transformation. Motivation is not a fleeting feeling, it is a practice, a mindset, and a commitment to becoming the person capable of achieving what you desire. Carry these principles with you, apply them daily, and watch your life shift in ways that once seemed impossible. Good luck on your journey. Thank you for dedicating this time to invest in yourself. Your future self will thank you for the choices you make today.